Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I am your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week, I bring a different phenomenal Black woman who's going to be changing the game as part of my 29 Days of Magic series. And this week's episode is no different. I am super psyched to have Marcia Cole, who is a multi-hyphenate, media marketing maven, as well as career and life coach and a bunch of other amazing things. We're going to have a great conversation about living your best life and finding your true purpose. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Marcia.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me. I'm just excited to be here.
Awesome. I'd like to have you on the show. So as you know, I always ask the same question first out of the gate when folks come on the show, and your episode will be no different.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcia, what was your first job?
So my first job out of college was as an assistant editor for Word Up magazine.
Wow.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. Right. Right. Exactly. And proud of it. I've worn these stripes. I've earned these stripes, right? So, but that was my first job. After school, I went to Parsons School of Design, actually. I have a bachelor's in fine arts. And I started as an assistant editor at the dawn of hip hop, covering hip hop for a fanzine, and realized how much I loved doing so. I thought I was going to actually enter. I knew I wanted to work in magazines when I was in college, but I thought I was going to enter through the art side as opposed to the editorial side. So I always knew how to write, but I never thought of writing as a career ever. And a friend was working, one of my college best friends was working in the same building, and the editor was looking for an assistant. Now, we were a 2-person team, so it wasn't like a typical magazine. It wasn't a typical magazine where it was laced with 20 people on the staff. It was just myself and the editor-in-chief. And so there's great things about that, and then there's horrible things about that. Great things is that you learn all the jobs, and you really get to understand how everything works. In a bigger company, you are really just typically regulated to just that one thing. And so I was there for a long time and became an editor-in-chief 3 years later at the age of 26. And so they had another magazine did spin-offs, and they had Rap Masters, and then they launched another magazine called Too Hype, and then I became the editor-in-chief of that. Side of Too Hype, there was a section called Hype Hair. And then they launched a hair care magazine from that called Hype Hair, and then I became the editor of Hype Hair. And ran that for like 3 years. Hype Hair, we launched another Braids. I launched Braids and Beauty, so it was the first natural hair magazine that existed before it was a thing. So I became like the beauty person, right? And beauty/fashion, because I studied fashion illustration in college. So when the magazine started and I became editor of the hair books, then it was an opportunity to merge entertainment, which is what I did previously, with beauty and style, which was what my background was in college. And so it kind of went from there. We did like small team again, 6 photo shoots a month, the covers with celebrities. They were all celebrity covers. So I was wrangling, celebrity covers. We did gatefold color covers of like primetime beauties and the women in hip hop, created these very iconic things too at that time, where I remember, us pulling together a shoot with Queen Latifah, Yo-Yo, Queen Latifah, Yo-Yo, Lauryn Hill. And
what? She was on time back then.
Right. Right. And we were doing it in LA, and it was after there was the Lady of Soul Awards, like the Sister to Soul Train Awards. They used to do that one. Women of Soul Train, or something like that. And Latifah had not confirmed that she was going to show up on the shoot, right? So, but we have the shoots planned. Everybody else confirmed, and so they all meet backstage at the Soul Train Awards, and they're like, "Are you coming to the thing?" Because she was supposed to be a part, but she hadn't like finalized with us. And because they all, I think so, she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be there, whatever." And so they all show up. Jada Pinkett rolls through, and it turns
into
like
this off all over again.
Right. It turns into this whole, thing. So we had lots of great moments like that. We were, I was shooting Lauryn Hill before she was Lauryn Hill, right? And, Brandy, like there was a lot of great things that happened during that time. The team that I had worked with, the creators, so I was doing all the production. The team that I worked with, the photographers, Keith Majors, Hosea Johnson, the fashion stylist, Deborah Ginyard. Like we had a really great team and started creating images with the record labels in the music industry was started to pay attention to, because one, the magazine was all over the place at the time. Two, whenever we did a shoot, they would end up buying our shoot for the album artwork. So what they spent 3 times as much before with their team, they ended up liking what we did because they said it connected more with who the artist was. So Brandy's debut album is from the photo shoot of Hype Hair. They purchased the photo from our shoot and used that as her debut album, right? Like that's the backstory. Brownstone, there's one of their singles that was our photo shoot that we did for the story with Brownstone. Like so, and it kept happening over and over.
I am good at this.
Right, right. And so, and I didn't even think of it in that way. It was just like, we want to do the shoot. And, this is what we're doing, and this is the concept. And we looked at their image, and we would just, pull together what we wanted it to actually look like. We're going to do this type of photography. Do more grainy film. Do ring light. Let's do that. And it was really just us trying to create what we wanted for the book. And then they're like, yeah, great. So we had a lot of, so a lot of careers were also spawned from that. Yeah, because we were all coming up together. Like we were all in our, mid-20s.
You were kids and you were figuring it out.
Right, yeah. So it's good to see it happening again, with other people. Overall. So all of that to say, I've been in this for a minute.
I think you have given the most complex, yet most comprehensive, yet most baller as hell first job story of all time in the 70 odd episodes I've recorded for this podcast. So thank you, Marcia, for letting down that gauntlet.
Now what? Right?
You're like, okay, and we're done here now. So what else? Okay, so you have that illustrious beginning. What is it you do now?
So after 20, at that point, like 20 something odd years of being in the magazine industry, and my background, I mean, after Hype Hair and all of those things, I moved on to different places. I worked at Fairchild. I worked at, which eventually became, I launched a magazine under Fairchild. I worked with One World, which was a part of Russell Simmons's entourage. I was the executive editor for Girl, the executive editor for Heart and Soul, and then became the deputy editor for the last magazine, which was then Suede magazine, a combination or a joint venture between Time Inc. and Essence. And so my background was launching or relaunching media properties. That became the story. And then I launched my own. I launched Amber Mag, which is an online beauty magazine, one of the first ones, in 2007, launched Amber Mag, it's an online beauty magazine for women of color, and created partnerships with BET.com and AOL, and did college tours. And my first advertiser was Mazzani. We got them to advertise. Um, Iman was one of our advisors on the beauty advisory boards, and then she came on as an advertiser afterwards and sponsor. And put together our beauty section was called Adore Your Beauty, and we had a beauty tour. We went to colleges, so Hampton, Howard, we went to Spelman, and we did on-site activations, and so all of that during the 5 years that I ran Amber Mag, I was also consulting because, when I launched the industry, that was also when the economy tanked, and so we had that huge recession, 2007, 2008, and so I was consulting to actually. Make that venture happen, right? And over the course of 5 years, I realized that I had a body of work. I was completely burned out from Amber Mag because I was doing edit content and selling, right? So I was burning it on both ends, right? And so I became really burnt out. And I was like, and the industry had changed very much so. This was a period where all of the reality shows were like the big thing, right? And so,
of course,
the Basketball Wives, but it was all the mean girls of it, and I was just like, wow, if I have to write about these folks and the Evelyn Lozatos and the things, if I have to watch this and write about this in order for my website to gain more traction, I was like, I think this is where I get off, because that's not why I started this. I started this to be a space where women of color would be able to celebrate their diversity, not be a mean girl to someone else because they were different than you,
right,
because you could. And I didn't want to be a part of that exploitation, because it literally was, if your site was not covering that, you weren't getting traffic, at all. And so I figured out what was to do next, and I realized I had a body of work from the consultation to then start an agency. And what happened with me was that I became burnt out over writing because I was working both ends, right? And I didn't have the full support that I needed, that I should have, that I didn't have the full support. And I became burnt out from writing. And so I was doing art as well. So graphics I was doing when there wasn't enough money to pay a graphic designer. Then, I relied back on my training. And so I was like, I would be a creative director anyway. And I would work with the art person and do this color, try this font, or, things like that. And so I knew how to maneuver around the tools to, so Quark and Photoshop and all those things. And so a friend of mine asked me to do a logo for a client that she was working with, and she was doing branding with them. And the client opened up a wholesale floral shop in the floral district called J Flowers. So a friend of mine, let me go back. So a friend of mine asked me to do a logo for a client that she had, that she was helping them with branding. And it was a wholesale floral shop called J Rose Hope Florals. And I was at the salon, and I was underneath the dryer, and I bagged out 3 or 4 logos. I sent it off, and they're like, oh yeah, these are great. Yeah, I love it. This is perfect. Oh, just change this or whatever. And then it was like, wait a minute.
That's not here.
Wait a minute. But I felt it though, because and I'll explain later on when we go into passions and stuff. I felt what I felt when I was doing it. I was at one with the project, right? And there is a space that you're in when you are writing, when you're at one with what you're writing, when you're one with the words, and you're in a zone, as a writing zone, and you connect with it, right? And it was the same feeling when I was doing the design. I was connecting with it, and I hadn't felt that in a while because I was burnt out. But it was an aha moment, because I was like, the dryer isn't even done the 45 minutes with this relaxer. And
it isn't burning me yet.
Well, isn't it right? But that the shampoo and wrap set thing, and And I was like, I'm not even done under the dryer, and I just finished this job, and I just made X amount doing this job. What am I doing? I'm like running around trying to make, making making it more harder for myself, basically. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to I'm going to spin this off into an agency. So Ivy Digital started first with design. And my first client was a former colleague who knew me from Heart and Soul. I was as the editor, and he was launching a Hispanic health website. And so I was the former editor of Heart and Soul, which was a health magazine for women, for Black women. And I was also the former beauty and fashion producer at Latina.com. And so I've also worked in the Latino space. And so I knew both audiences, and I knew how to actually create a content based website, right? Because at that point I had worked at AOL as managing editor, worked at RealSimple.com as a managing editor, and so, and plus my own projects. So I knew what was actually required. So they ended up being the first client. We took it over. We ended up doing content design and build the website and manage their social media pages for like the first year of the project. I mean, unfortunately, they're a startup and they didn't get the funding to continue on with it. But that year gave me a time to figure out how I wanted to really position myself. And I was like, I didn't want to dissolve my, 20 something years as an editor, which people knew me as, prior to that. And I didn't want to throw that away. And so when I really looked at what was happening in the space, and it allowed me to really figure out the tagline of Ivy Digital, which is we are cultural, social storytellers. It allowed me then to, because I didn't put it out there fully, so no one actually knew what was happening. And so doing that it gave me the space to figure it out while we were creating and managing everything for this one client. And to figure out like, where do I want to position the agency overall? And I was like, there's a million and one design companies, and I don't want to, again, dismiss what I did prior to. And so it became more of like we were a content marketing agency. And then the second client was, my first sponsor. Design became the second client, and so we got into L'Oreal as as a vendor, and did them and helped them with their social media. And so we managed their social media accounts and grew it from 0 to 10,000 in a very short window. And created a lot of great projects with it. We did when everyone was doing those memes with product launches. We created the first lead generation meme that helped a business to business organization. So yeah, that gave me the time to figure out where we would be positioned in the industry in of itself. I said, there are a million and one graphic design firms. What is my point of view, right? What my expertise is that I was a former magazine and digital editor. My expertise is in storytelling. My expertise is being able to really look at things from a 360, not just from writing and editing, but also marketing and how do you present it to the consumer. And so the tagline was developed after a year. It was cultural, social storytellers, and that we help brands tell their stories across digital and social media and using branded content. And so clients can hire us in any of those three buckets. We added PR, became an add-on to it because I did PR for Revlon years ago, and I kept getting, requests kept coming in, and so I was just like, okay, and but I only take on like very select clients. And so it's really been like book authors, and they've had a really, really magnificent story to tell and to share. I had an author that's based out of India that created a lovely young adult trilogy. My doctor client who had OBGYN, who has a great book about just, women understanding their bodies. There was another client that came out with a lovely children's book that helped with it was about her nephew being able to accept his culture as a Jamaican and the foods that Jamaicans eat and how it connected to other cultures all around. So there is there's an underlying theme of it being able to connect with people internally and being able to help them overall. And so that then I understood, for me that matters most. Like, what is the project about? How are they contributing to conversations that are positive? How are they impacting? How will it impact those who are a part of it? Then that became like the criteria that I look through. The clients that I work with. And even if they weren't doing something, that I would bring some sort of community-based concepts toward them. It's like, well, what are you doing within the community and how can we turn this into some level of awareness overall? And so, And so over the years, and now the agency is 7 years old. I've worked with Mizani, WeDad, American Salon. We ended up doing special issues, for them. That brought me back to the magazine days. And so being able to just, so it was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is how it goes. I know the production and bringing that together. And it was a digital based issue. And L'Oreal ended up being the client that was the branded content platform. So I was already familiar with them, in that way. And so we did work with Sirius XM. We've done work with the Yitzhak Rabin Foundation. We've done a wide variety. And so Iman Cosmetics, Jade Manuel, Beauty. And so, yeah, it's just done a pretty wild. It's been a good ride.
Awesome. And it's like how I think I'm busy. I'm like, no, apparently not. Marcia is. And then on top of that, then you launched this coaching service, which I'm fascinated about because I think it's such an underrated tool, especially amongst women. And so listen, like it changed my life when I started going to one 2 years ago. And I don't think I would have been able to build a business. Honestly, I don't think I would be doing this crazy idea of mine had it not been for the fact that it's helped me sort of understand the hell I'm good at and why I should do it. And so I would love for you to talk about, how you came to become a coach and some lessons that you would like to impart upon some folks.
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree with you. I would have, if I had known how invaluable coaching is, and I'm not just saying that because I am a coach, I would have never started a business without having a coach with me. Never, ever, ever. I didn't really have mentors in that sense of like, I've always operated like I have an idea but I had the wherewithal and I can see the minutia to actually get it done. And I had the will to move forward into getting it done. And so if I needed someone to help something happen, I knew enough to know that everyone is like, I've been in this space long enough to know people, right? And I'm like, and everyone is one phone call or 2 phone calls away. There isn't a single person that I can't get to if I truly want to get to them.
Same.
I know that somebody can get to them within my circle, right? And so, but in the same vein, and even though I had my business and even though I've been successful, and that's like, when you're an entrepreneur, you unravel parts of yourself that you would never, ever, ever, I think, unravel if you're working for someone else. The fears that pop up, the roadblocks, the mental roadblocks that you have to really jump through and go through to go to the next level, to grow your business to the next level. Like you can't do that by yourself, right? And so I knew that I was hitting a roadblock, and I knew that there were roadblocks and that were preventing me from making that call, that was preventing me from doing, reaching out to, the next person that I needed to get to, or, going to that. But I didn't know how to break through it. So I went through a program initially called Momentum Education. So I went to Momentum, and so I went there looking for business coaching, and they have a program. It's like the basic, they have advanced, and they have leadership, and they have all these other things within it. So I went there for thinking, like, okay, this will help me get breakthrough. And it did. It actually highlighted the other areas in my life that I wasn't paying attention to. And when I started to pay attention to those areas in a more intentional way and really connect with like who I am and what I wanted from a very, very intentional space, then the doors open in an entirely different way. I increased at one point, like I increased revenue like $70,000 without having to do a single pitch, right? Like things just kind of opened up without having to do. And the other areas that I wasn't really paying attention to or giving as much effort to were family. Right? Not my friends, but family, which I had like some estranged family and, like the family situation, have siblings and, things like that. Everyone was all very separate and overall. And so at that point, I was like, I guess at some point I just accepted that that's what it was. But when this going through the coaching program allowed me to space or to say, is that really what I wanted? Just because I accepted it as is, but is that really what I wanted, right? And when I answered that question, honestly, the answer was no. I wanted a closer relationship with these siblings and the cousins and all these people who are just like, everyone was just in their own space. And so when I made the effort to reconnect and to do those things, then work opened up in a whole other way. And so it was a really amazing road for self-discovery. And so all of that to say, like I went through the program, went all the way through. I went through leadership, and leadership is like 90 days to produce outrageous results for yourself. Again, in all of these, every area of your life, right? And so you have to look at your finances, your education, your family, your relationships, and you really, again, take the time to say, what do I want in all of these areas? Not what it has been, not what I'm accepting. What do you want? And that requires honesty. And like, if you really, again, like what it has been could be like, it was disaster, but what do you want?
Success. I want amazing. I want tough cash.
Right. I want it to be something else. What kind of clients do I want? What kind of client relationships do I want? And so going into that, it was my self-awareness became, was exponential, through going through that program. And it allowed me to see one, how people may experience me, at any moment. And then how different that may be of what I thought that they experienced me. And so how people responded to me, how I was able to see I was able to see myself, and I was able to see how people see me, right? And then from there choose, is that what you want, right? The truth of, not the truth of others, but what is the truth of me? And how do I want to show up in the world? And how do I want people to see me? And am I showing up in the world as my full self? Or am I showing up in the world as, a portion of myself, like, hard ass as opposed to, soft, as opposed to, are they seeing your heart as opposed to, something else? And I think in this world where it's like, we've been, the conversation is so much about Black women, but we can't, that conversation that drum that beats is a constant thing, and it's coming partially from us. They don't allow us, it's like, we have to stop that narrative, because you don't realize how much, even for the next generation, what you are constantly telling them is that life will be very hard, and it doesn't always have to be that way. That doesn't say that you're not going to experience things, but if we make that as the onset, right, the expectation, what exactly will you be creating from that expectation? we get the results we get are based upon what we believe. And if you're constantly believing that, you will be viewed as the other, you will be viewed as the enemy, you'll be viewed as, this or less than, and all of those things that we are constantly saying. And again, it doesn't diminish that what actually happens in the world. But what I'm saying is that you have to be able to say, that's not the story for me. That's not the story that I want. Right. And even if that comes to me, there's a way that I can handle that doesn't detract from who I am overall. Now, that takes work for sure, but I'm just like, we have to stop that narrative. I'm like, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear us literally fight for our own limitation. Right.
And right.
Like you're constantly like saying like you can't, because that is
I can't. Yeah, it's so
right.
It's important. It's so key, because once you like, look, what is it you want? Like what? Right. And what is it? And but also, like, what do you think you're good at? Like all the there's so much more out there, and I think that oftentimes, but again, it's hard to get that on your own. And by having a coach who essentially is a coach, and I think a lot of times telling people that, like, look, Tiger Woods is a coach, LeBron James is a coach, like everyone has a coach.
Right.
And there's no shame in this game, and you need to have one.
Right. Right. And that's what I wrote in my thing. I was just like, Serena didn't become the GOAT by herself. You can't become the best that you can be without actual getting coaching. So anyway, so like, I did that. I went through the program, and then I came back to volunteer. So I had no intention, let's just be clear. I had no intention on being a coach. I had no intention on becoming certified as a coach. That was not in the plan when I signed up for this. Not anywhere near in my thought psyche, or in my conscious thought and psyche. It was nowhere near it. I come back to volunteer, and I'm in the room. So it's transformational coaching, and which goes on deeper levels, right? And so it's a group coaching thing. People come in on it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the basic. They come in, and and New Yorkers are skeptical. Everybody keeps to themselves, and then they take them through a series of exercises. And by Saturday, it's literally people's faces and countenance have completely changed. So when I come back to volunteer, now I'm on the other side as an assistant coach, and you get to see that, and you get to see the transformation right before your eyes, literally. You're experiencing it when you're there, but being a part of, the team that then comes together to create space for that to happen. There was a huge aha moment that happened for me. It was a breakdown, actually, because I finished my leadership in September. The executive director invited our team to come back to volunteer in January. And I was like, that's too soon. This was really intense. I'll just wait, and everything. And I volunteered, and I think I volunteered in February. And I was like, okay. And when I saw, and then I was like, oh my God, this work is so important, right? I was like, this work is so important. I literally it was like bawling. I had to leave the room because I broke down in tears. I was like, because what I heard was like, how dare you wait to do this? And I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be doing this. And so that's how that came about. And again, it wasn't, and I was like, okay, I'm listening. I'm supposed to be doing it. And for the next 2 years, I volunteered and helped facilitate it coaching over 200 and something people. And when I had finished my leadership, or part of the leadership, was one of the community. And what I did when the community was, we did a thing with feeding the homeless, and it was a program. And my community thing was then to raise, to get donations of women's sanitary napkins and stuff like that for homeless shelters. And I collected like 25,000 and then distributed to, and I'd found a partner, and, they had connections with the shelters all around. Again, not my intention, not my idea, not my
It's your thing.
conscious thinking. And so after we finished the program, I was like, wow, well, this is an ongoing need, so it shouldn't just end just because this was a part of, a workshop. And I was like, well, let me figure out how to pull in all of my elements and things together. And when I finished the leadership, I was like, wouldn't it be great if we had a version of the basic into homeless shelters? And everyone was like, yeah, because we were in a group chat and stuff. And with the blessing of the executive director, then I created an 8-week program based off of the basic and based off of some practices that I was already doing, which was a part of personal development. And a year later, Passion Meets Purpose was launched. It became the 501c3. I partnered with the Help USA, and then we launched the pilot program in Brooklyn. And then the following year, I partnered with Acacia Network. We did it in a men's shelter, and it's just been. It's transformative for the people who participate. But when you are there, being a part of someone's light going on within them. And for the program is really about like helping people who are experiencing homelessness understand that, your physical and financial being is not the totality of who you are or your absolute potential, right? And so, and helping them to be able to learn that they can create a life by design and not live a life by default. And so, so that's what the program, is about. And I created it, and I wasn't certified. I was just like, okay, let me get the coaches who are certified.
Let's get this done. Go, come on, let's be real here. Let's just get it done. So, question for you. So, you've done all this amazing stuff because we're running a little bit out of time. Yeah. What in the world do you do for Marcia? Like, what is your self-care?
Right. So my self-care. So my self-care is very intense. And I would say not very intense, but I learned that I couldn't do those things. And I can't do, and I knew once I started doing the work with the shelters, I knew that I have to be grounded in a different way. And I have to, I have to be grounded in a different way. I have to be able to stand in this and I would say protect myself, for a lack of a better word, but be able to stand in a way that I can stand for others without depleting myself.
Right.
Right. So self-care for me means that there is prayer and meditation. There is, and that is daily. And because I've been on, so that put me on a journey, like this, a higher spiritual journey, actually, which is what's been going on simultaneously within this, right? And so the studying of that and understanding of that and going to the books and that really ground me. That means that's how I ended up leaving New York and going to and relocating to Arizona, and being able to be closer to the metaphysical spaces, being, learning how to ground with water, learning, with essential oils, learning chakras, learning, all of those things. So like I practice all of that, before I go out, even before I do, I coach with a client, there is prayer and meditation because I'm tuning into who they are and what they're going to need, at that moment, and being a vessel race, basically. And so, so that means, yes, spas.
You're like, I do get my spas.
I do spas, getting, doing what's going to give me joy, my inner spirit that's going to bring me joy, right? And so that's a cornerstone of like, even when I'm coaching, I'm just like, what are you doing that actually brings you joy outside of the work? Like, so I love my work. So it's not work to me. It's work for sure, but I don't view it as, oh my God, there are parts of it definitely that's like, oh God, this is the chore, right? But it's important for me to do things that spark my creativity, go to the museums, just watch, binge watch movies.
Exactly.
You
It's
know,
so key.
right. Eat some yogurt, ice cream, so what,
You got
whatever I need to make sure, go to the beach and not do anything,
just
right?
do nothing.
Nothing, absolutely nothing. I may just listen to some audio books or, that's teaching me. Even with the teaching and stuff that's ongoing, there's a point where I'm just like, I have to just not do anything because again, that brain overload is very strong.
It's
And
gonna be
so,
yeah.
so I need to, this self-care is going to going to the gym, going to, go jump rope outside. If I can't do anything, go sit down and just soak up some sun, go, go to the beach. And so I like what self-care is a non-negotiable for me now.
Damn right. So last question, how can we be helpful to you? So the thing I'm doing for 29 Days of Magic is a give or an ask. So is there something that you'd like, or is something that you'd like to give to the audience? Because I want this to become like a really amazing circle of people who I get to talk to over the course of the month.
So a give, I'll start with that. Well, I offer complimentary coaching, so they can sign up on my website to do that. It's lifeonlevelscoaching.com, lifeonlevelscoaching.com. And so so I'll do a complimentary 45-minute, coaching session. To do it. I'm going to launch an F Your Fear challenge very soon. And so the ask would be then to help to promote it.
Done.
That would be the ask. Yeah,
perfect. We'll put all of this incredible stuff that you're doing everywhere in the show notes so people can find you. I think it's so lovely that you'd like to offer a complimentary coaching session. That's phenomenal. Marcia, I could talk to you all day.
I know. I hope we even got to, did we get to all the questions? I was like a motor mouth.
That's I told you, I'll just have you talk. It'll be fine. But thank you so very much. I am honored that you were able to come on the show and just give a little peek of all the amazingness that you do, because I watch from afar and I always am like, it's amazing.
Thank you. We're listen, I'm working on something.
I know.
But I was like, okay, she's gonna be good for this. We gotta work together. That's what I keep saying. I was like, we gotta figure out a way to work together. Some kind of way.
Trust and believe we will. But thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic. And as I said, we'll put all this stuff in the show notes so people can find you and hopefully reach out and get some of your amazingness. But it's been a delight. So thank you so very much. And that is our show.
Thank you.